March 18, 1990, St. Patrick's Day in Boston, Massachusetts. While most of the city was sleeping off celebrations, two men in police uniforms were about to pull off the biggest art heist in American history. What they stole that night has never been recovered. The thieves have never been caught, and the empty frames still hang on the museum walls, waiting for masterpieces that may never return. This is the story of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist, a crime so audacious, so meticulously timed, and so professionally executed that it has baffled investigators for over 3 decades. $500 million in irreplaceable art vanished in 81 minutes. And the strangest part? The clues they left behind suggest this wasn't just a robbery, it was something much more calculated. Let me take you back to that night, and together we'll walk through one of the most perplexing mysteries in criminal history. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum sits like a Venetian palace transplanted into Boston's Fenway neighborhood. It's not your typical museum. Isabella Stewart Gardner, a wealthy art collector and patron, built it in 1903 to house her personal collection. When she died in 1924, her will contained an unusual stipulation. Nothing in the museum could ever be moved, rearranged, or sold. Everything had to remain exactly as she had arranged it, forever. This detail becomes crucial to our story, because when the thieves struck that night, they didn't just steal art, they violated a century-old promise. And those empty frames hanging on the walls, they can't be taken down. Isabella's will demands they stay exactly where they are, a haunting reminder of what was lost. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to that night. It's 1:24 a.m. on March 18, 1990. The museum has been closed for hours. Inside, 2 security guards are on duty. Richard Abath, 23 years old, sits at the security desk in the front entrance. His partner, Randy Heist, is making his rounds through the museum's corridors. It's his 2nd year working the overnight shift. It's quiet, uneventful work, usually. The museum's security system, even by 1990 standards, is outdated. There are motion detectors in the galleries, but no cameras monitoring the guards or the entrances. The only cameras point at the exterior doors, recording who comes and goes. The security desk has a panic button, but it's within arm's reach, not hidden or protected. These details matter. Someone knew about these vulnerabilities. At 1:24 a.m., Abath hears a knock on the side entrance door. He looks up from his desk. Through the glass, he sees 2 Boston police officers in uniform. They're standing at the entrance, looking official, looking legitimate. One of them calls out that they're responding to a disturbance. They need to come inside and investigate. Now here's the first critical decision point. Museum policy is crystal clear. Never open the doors after closing. Never let anyone in, no matter what. Not police, not firefighters, not anyone. If there is an emergency, the guards are supposed to call it in and wait for explicit authorization. But Richard Abath is 23 years old. He's face to face with 2 police officers who say they're responding to a call. What does he do? He opens the door. The moment that lock clicks open, the biggest art heist in American history begins. The 2 men step inside. They're wearing legitimate-looking Boston police uniforms, complete with badges. One is stocky, with dark hair. The other is taller, more slender. Both are white males. Both are calm, professional, unhurried. They tell Abath they need to check something in the museum. They ask him to step away from the security desk. He complies. And then, in an instant, everything changes. Gentlemen, this is a robbery. Don't give us any trouble, and you won't get hurt. Before Abath can react, they're on him. They pull his arms behind his back. Handcuffs click shut. They ask him if anyone else is in the building. He tells them yes, one other guard. They order him to call his partner over the radio. "Randy, can you come to the desk for a minute?" Randy Heist appears within moments. The instant he arrives, he's handcuffed too. Neither guard resisted, neither reached for the panic button. Within 3 minutes of entering the building, the thieves have neutralized the only two people standing between them and hundreds of millions of dollars in art. But here's where it gets stranger. The thieves take both guards down to the basement. They duct tape them to pipes in separate rooms. They wrap tape around their heads, covering their eyes and mouths, leaving only their noses free to breathe. And then they place both guards face down. And they say something odd, something that investigators would analyze for years. "You'll be hearing from us in about a year." What does that mean? Why a year? This single sentence has sparked countless theories. Were they planning to ransom the art? Were they working for someone who needed time to broker a sale? Or was it just psychological manipulation, something to keep the guards quiet and confused? We still don't know. What we do know is what happens next. For the next 81 minutes, those two thieves moved through the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum like they had all the time in the world. The motion detectors recorded their movements. They didn't run, they didn't panic. They walked methodically from gallery to gallery, selecting specific pieces with what seemed predetermined purpose. They went straight to the Dutch room on the second floor. This wasn't random. The Dutch room houses some of the museum's most valuable pieces. They knew exactly where to go. The first piece they took was Rembrandt's The Storm on the Sea of Galilee. Painted in 1633, it's Rembrandt's only known seascape. The painting depicts Christ and his disciples caught in a violent storm, waves crashing, the boat tilting dangerously. It's a masterpiece of dramatic lighting and emotional intensity. It's worth at least $100 million. But the thieves didn't carefully remove it from the frame. They cut it out. They took a blade and sliced the canvas from its frame, right there on the wall. This is crucial. Professional art thieves, ones working for collectors or planning to ransom the pieces, would never do this. Cutting a canvas damages it, reduces its value, makes it harder to authenticate later. Careful removal takes only minutes longer, but they cut it anyway. They took another Rembrandt from the same room, A Lady and Gentleman in Black. Painted in 1633, it shows a married couple in formal Dutch attire. Again, they cut it from the frame. Two irreplaceable Rembrandts, sliced free like they were in a hurry, even though they had the entire museum to themselves. Then they moved to a different area. They took Vermeer's The Concert, painted around 1664. Only 34 Vermeer paintings are known to exist in the world. The concert shows three figures making music in an elegant room, bathed in Vermeer's signature luminous light. It's considered one of the most valuable paintings in existence, worth potentially $250 million or more. They cut it from the frame. They grabbed Govard Flink's Landscape with an Obelisk. They took 5 drawings by Degas. They moved to the Short Gallery and took a Chinese bronze beaker from the Shang dynasty, over 3,000 years old. They went to the Glue Room and took a bronze eagle finial that topped a Napoleonic flag. And then they did something that still puzzles investigators. They tried to take 2 additional pieces, but couldn't. They attempted to remove Rembrandt's self-portrait and another painting, but they couldn't get them off the walls. Some art historians believe these pieces might have been too large or too securely mounted. Others think the thieves simply ran out of time or changed their minds. But here's the truly baffling part. They walked right past numerous other masterpieces. They ignored Titian's Europa, one of the most important paintings in the entire museum. They passed by Botticelli, Raphael, and Michelangelo. They left behind paintings worth tens of millions of dollars. Why? At 2:45 a.m., 81 minutes after they entered the museum, the motion detectors recorded their final movements. They returned to the security desk, gathered the museum's surveillance tape from that night, and walked out the same door they came in. They loaded the art into a vehicle, they drove away, and they vanished completely.
The next morning, the day shift security guard arrived at 8:15 a.m. He found the side entrance door unlocked. He found the security desk abandoned. He found the surveillance equipment missing. And when he heard muffled sounds from the basement, he found Richard Abbott and Randy Heastand still duct taped to the pipes after 7 hours in the dark. The Boston police were called immediately. The FBI arrived shortly after. And when investigators began cataloging what was missing, they realized they were looking at the biggest art heist in American history. 13 pieces, total estimated value, $500 million. Some experts say it could be worth twice that much. And every single piece, irreplaceable. The investigation began immediately, and it would become one of the longest-running art crime investigations in FBI history. The first question seemed simple. Who were those two fake police officers? Witnesses had seen a car parked near the museum that night, sometime around 12:30 a.m., about an hour before the heist. It was described as a small, dark hatchback, possibly red. Two men sat inside, waiting, watching. Were they the thieves? Were they accomplices? The car was never identified. The surveillance tape that recorded the exterior doors had been taken, but the motion detector data remained. Investigators could see the thieves' movements through the museum, which galleries they entered, how long they spent in each room. The pattern suggested familiarity. These weren't amateurs stumbling through a museum. They knew the layout. But the way they took the art, that suggested something different. Cutting canvases from frames is what desperate criminals do, not sophisticated art thieves. It's destructive, risky, and makes the art harder to sell. Professional thieves working for collectors would never do this. So who were they? One theory emerged quickly: organized crime. Boston in 1990 was still very much a city where the mob had influence. The timing of the heist on St. Patrick's Day weekend, when police were stretched thin dealing with celebrations, suggested local knowledge. The confidence with which the thieves operated suggested they weren't afraid of consequences. Investigators began looking at known criminal organizations. One name kept coming up: Carmelo Merlino, who ran an auto body shop in Dorchester that was known as a meeting place for criminals. Merlino had connections to art theft. He'd been involved in discussions about stolen paintings before, but could he have orchestrated something this sophisticated? The FBI interviewed Merlino. He denied any involvement. They watched him for years. They never found direct evidence. Then there was Robert Donati, a local mobster with ties to art theft. Donati had been involved in a previous scheme to steal art from a museum. He fit the profile. But there was a problem. Donati was murdered in September 1991, about 18 months after the Gardner heist. His murder remains unsolved. If he was involved, he took his knowledge to the grave. Another theory focused on Miles Connor Jr., a career criminal who specialized in art theft. Connor had actually stolen art from the Gardner Museum once before, back in the 1970s, although he later returned those pieces. He knew the museum's layout. He knew its vulnerabilities, and he was absolutely capable of planning something this complex. But Miles Connor had a perfect alibi. He was in federal prison when the heist occurred, locked up. Impossible for him to have been one of the thieves. However, that doesn't mean he wasn't involved. Could he have planned it from prison? Could he have given information to others? Connor himself has hinted that he knows more than he's saying. In interviews, he suggested that he knows who has the art, but he's never provided names or evidence. Is he lying, bragging, or does he actually know something? The investigation expanded internationally. Art theft is a global criminal enterprise. Stolen masterpieces often move across borders quickly, sold to private collectors in countries with less stringent laws, or held as collateral in criminal underworld transactions. The FBI contacted Interpol. They reached out to international art theft investigators. Years passed. Leads dried up. Tips came in constantly, but none led to the art. People claimed to have seen the paintings. People claimed to know who took them. Every lead was investigated. Every tip was followed. Nothing panned out. And then in 1994, something strange happened. The museum received a letter. The writer claimed to have the stolen art and wanted to negotiate a return. The museum immediately contacted the FBI. They arranged to have a representative meet with the letter writer. The meeting happened. The person who showed up claimed they could get the art back for a price. The museum, desperate for any breakthrough, engaged in negotiations. But as discussions continued, it became clear this person didn't actually have the art. They were a fraud, trying to scam the museum with false promises. The lead evaporated. This became a pattern. Over the years, multiple people have claimed to have the art or to know where it is. Some wanted money, some wanted reduced sentences for other crimes. Some seemed to genuinely believe they had information. But every single time, the claims fell apart under scrutiny. In 1997, a reporter received a tip that the art was being held in a warehouse. The FBI raided the location. They found nothing. In 2010, the museum received a suspicious package. Bomb squads were called. It turned out to be a hoax. The investigation was going in circles. But then, in 2013, the FBI made a stunning announcement. After 23 years of investigation, they believed they knew who the thieves were. They released a statement saying they had identified the two men who walked into the museum that night dressed as police officers. They belonged to a criminal organization based in New England and the Mid-Atlantic states. But here's the frustrating part. The FBI didn't release the names. They said both suspects were dead. They couldn't be prosecuted. And apparently, these men had moved the art through criminal networks, but the FBI still didn't know where the paintings ended up. How could they know who did it, but not where the art is? This is one of the most maddening aspects of the case. The FBI claims they traced the thieves' movements in the years after the heist. They believe the art was offered for sale in the Philadelphia area around 2003. They think it might have changed hands multiple times. But 13 pieces of instantly recognizable, world-famous art? How do you sell that? How do you move it without anyone noticing? This brings us to one of the strangest theories about the heist, that it was never about selling the art at all. Some investigators believe the Gardner heist was actually a means to an end. In the criminal underworld, stolen art serves a different purpose than you might think. It's not always about selling it to collectors. Sometimes it's about leverage. Imagine you're a criminal organization. You've been caught, your members are facing serious prison time, but you have something valuable, something the government desperately wants back. You could use that as a bargaining chip. Reduce our sentences and we'll tell you where the art is. This happens more often than you think in art theft cases. The stolen pieces become insurance policies, get-out-of-jail cards that can be played when needed. Is that what happened here? Did someone steal the Gardner art specifically to use as leverage later? If so, why hasn't it worked? Why hasn't anyone played that card in 35 years? Unless the people who knew where it was all died before they could use it. Let me tell you about the guard, Richard Abath, because this story is fascinating and troubling. For years after the heist, Abath was questioned repeatedly. Why did he open the door? Why did he leave his post? Was he in on it? Investigators discovered something strange in the security records from that night. Before the thieves arrived, at around 12:50 a.m., Abath had opened the side entrance door. The motion detectors recorded him stepping outside briefly, then coming back in. He'd never mentioned this. When asked about it years later, he said he couldn't remember why he did it. He thought maybe he heard something outside. Was he opening the door to signal accomplices that everything was ready? Or was it just a coincidence, a young guard stepping out for air on a quiet night? Abath was polygraphed multiple times. The results were inconclusive. Some investigators believed he was involved. Others thought he was just a naive kid who made a terrible mistake by opening the door. Abath died in 2021 at age 56. He maintained until his death that he was not involved in the heist, that he was just doing what he thought was right when police officers asked to come inside. We'll never know for certain. The museum has never given up hope. In 2017, they doubled the reward for information leading to the art's recovery. It now stands at $10 million. That's one of the largest rewards ever offered for stolen property. The museum's current security director has said they receive tips constantly. Some are clearly false, others seem more promising. Every single one is investigated. So far, nothing has brought the art home. And those empty frames? They still hang on the walls, exactly where Isabella Stewart Gardner placed them over a century ago. Visitors walk through the Dutch room and see the empty spaces where Rembrandt's masterpieces once hung. It's haunting. It's a wound that won't heal. Some art experts believe the paintings are gone forever. Canvas that's been cut from its frame and improperly stored deteriorates rapidly. Without climate control, without proper care, paintings crack, colors fade, the material itself breaks down. If the thieves rolled up those canvases and stored them in a basement somewhere, they might already be destroyed. Other experts are more optimistic. They point to cases where stolen art has been recovered decades later, sometimes in surprisingly good condition. In 2006, 2 Picassos stolen in 2001 were found in a luggage compartment. In 2012, masterpieces by Picasso, Monet, and others were discovered in a Munich apartment 40 years after being looted by Nazis. Art has a way of surviving. It has a way of resurfacing. So, where does the investigation stand today, in 2025? The FBI still considers the Gardner heist an open case. They still receive and investigate leads. But the agents who worked the case in 1990 have long since retired. The thieves, whoever they were, are likely dead. The people who might have fenced the art, the criminal networks that moved it through the underworld, many of them are gone too. Time is the enemy in cases like this. Every year that passes, memories fade, witnesses die, evidence degrades, the trail gets colder. But there's also a strange phenomenon in art theft. Major cases often break open decades later. Someone makes a deathbed confession. Someone's storage unit is cleared out after they die, and inside, rolled up in a trunk, is a missing masterpiece. A lawyer receives a mysterious package with instructions not to open it until after their client's death. These things happen. Could the Gardner art resurface this way? Could we wake up one morning to news that someone has come forward with information, that the paintings have been found? The museum certainly hopes so. They've made it clear they don't care about prosecution at this point. They just want the art back. They've promised that if anyone comes forward with the paintings, no questions asked, they'll work with authorities to ensure the most lenient treatment possible. That's not a blanket amnesty, but it's as close as a museum can offer. So what really happened on March 18, 1990? Let me walk you through what we know for certain and what remains frustratingly unclear. We know 2 men dressed as police officers entered the museum at 1:24 a.m. We know they subdued 2 guards and stole 13 pieces of art in 81 minutes. We know they've never been caught and the art has never been recovered. We know the FBI believes they've identified the thieves, though the names have never been publicly released. We know these suspects are deceased. But here's what we don't know, and these are the questions that make this case so endlessly fascinating. Why these specific pieces? The selection makes no sense from a purely financial standpoint. They ignored more valuable paintings. They took works that would be impossible to sell on any legitimate market. What was the logic? Where is the art now? If the thieves are dead and the art changed hands multiple times, where did it end up? Is it in a private collection? Hidden in storage? Destroyed? Was this heist commissioned by someone? Did a collector hire these men to steal specific pieces? Or was it opportunistic, a crime of chance that went wrong? And perhaps most haunting, will we ever see these masterpieces again? I want to tell you about what was lost because it's easy to think of this as just art, just paint on canvas, just objects with monetary value. But what disappeared that night was irreplaceable human achievement. Rembrandt's The Storm on the Sea of Galilee isn't just a painting. It's a window into 17th century Dutch mastery, a moment when one of humanity's greatest artists put brush to canvas and captured something eternal. The way Rembrandt painted light, the way he captured human emotion, it's genius made visible. Vermeer's The Concert is one of only 34 surviving works by an artist who saw the world differently than anyone else. Vermeer painted light itself. He painted quiet moments with such profound beauty that they take your breath away centuries later. Losing a Vermeer is like losing a piece of human potential, proof of what we're capable of achieving. These weren't just valuable objects. They were treasures that belonged to everyone, to humanity. Isabella Stewart Gardner believed that. She believed art should be shared, experienced, allowed to change lives. That's why she opened her home as a museum. That's why her will demanded nothing ever be moved, so that each new generation could experience her collection exactly as she intended. The thieves didn't just steal from a museum, they stole from all of us. And yet, in a strange way, the empty frames have become art themselves. They've become a memorial to loss, a reminder that some wounds don't heal. Thousands of people visit the Gardner Museum every year specifically to see those empty frames. They stand in the Dutch room and stare at the vacant spaces and feel something profound. Absence as presence, loss as meaning. Would Isabella Stewart Gardner appreciate the irony? That the absence of her paintings has become as powerful as their presence once was? There's a detail I haven't mentioned yet. Something that might be nothing, or might be everything. Shortly before the heist, there was a party at the museum. A private event. Many people came through, including some who had criminal connections. Did someone case the museum that night? Did someone study the security, the layout, the guards' routines? And there's this. In the weeks before the heist, Richard Abath had mentioned to friends that he wished something exciting would happen on his overnight shifts. He was bored. He wanted adventure. He got more than he bargained for. The art world has a saying, stolen art always comes home eventually. It might take years, decades, even centuries, but art wants to be seen. It wants to be displayed, and eventually, someone always talks. The Gardner heist happened 35 years ago. That's a long time. Long enough for whoever took the art to be dead. Long enough for the paintings to have changed hands multiple times. Long enough for the original motives to be forgotten. But maybe not long enough for the art to be lost forever. In 2023, the museum's security director said something interesting in an interview. She said she believes the art still exists. She believes it's being stored somewhere, waiting. And she believes that someday, maybe soon, maybe not for another decade, someone will make a phone call or send a letter or walk through the museum's doors with information. And on that day, the empty frames will finally be filled again. Or maybe they won't. Maybe this is one of those mysteries that never gets solved. Maybe in 100 years, people will still be talking about the Gardner heist the way we talk about Jack the Ripper or D.B. Cooper, an unsolved puzzle that captures our imagination precisely because it remains unsolved. But I don't think so. I think the art is out there. I think someone knows where it is. And I think that eventually, whether through guilt or greed or simple desire to set things right, someone will come forward. Until then, the empty frames hang on the walls. The museum keeps its doors open. The investigators keep following leads, and millions of people around the world keep hoping that one day they'll wake up to the news that Rembrandt's storm-tossed sea has finally come home. March 18th, 1990. 2 men in police uniforms. 81 minutes. 13 stolen masterpieces.